Welcome back to Unboxing OD, the podcast where we explore the art and science of organizational development, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Kenneth Pearson, co-founder and OD consultant at Pearson & Pearson LLC, and I'm glad you're joining me in this space today. In this episode, we're going to take a look at something that often gets overshadowed in leadership development conversations. Something equally important, equally nuanced, and frankly, deeply misunderstood. That's the concept of followership. Now, if you're tempted to tune out at the word followership, I get it. We live in a world that glorifies leadership, charisma, decisiveness, vision. Leadership is exciting. It's powerful. It gets the spotlight. But what if I told you that without strong followership, leadership can't actually function? That in any effective team, influence moves in all directions, not just from the top down, but from the middle out and the ground up? As we proceed throughout this episode, we're going to explore what followership really means, why it's so essential, and how we, as OD practitioners, can help individuals and organizations build this as a skill, just like leadership. We'll also talk about the dance between the two, how leadership and followership are less about fixed roles and more about fluid, dynamic relationships. To bring it to life, I'll share a story that, while fictional, may feel pretty familiar. So, grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's dive in. The story of Camden and Elise. Picture a mid-sized nonprofit focused on community health and outreach. For years, the programs department was led by Elise, a steady, experienced leader who had earned the respect of her team through her ability to listen deeply and act decisively. Working under her was Camden, an incredibly sharp analyst with a knack for spotting patterns in data and making connections others often missed. He wasn't loud or flashy. He observed more than he spoke. But when he did contribute, people listened. Then, unexpectedly, the executive director announced a 6-month sabbatical, and Elise was tapped to serve as the interim director. It was a big shift. Overnight, Elise moved into a more public-facing leadership role, managing board relations and external strategy. Internally, that left a gap, and Camden was asked to step in to lead the program's team. At first, he hesitated. He wasn't sure he was ready for leadership, and some colleagues still saw him as the quiet numbers guy. But Elise didn't try to control things from behind the scenes. Instead, she supported Camden's transition, offering mentorship, stepping back at the right times, and modeling what healthy followership can look like when roles evolve. Camden found his footing. His leadership style wasn't like Elise's. It was more consultative, more process-oriented, but it worked. He brought clarity to the team's operations, helped them prioritize, and created space for others to lead alongside him. Meanwhile, Elise, now in the interim executive director seat, remained tuned in, providing guidance when needed, but never undermining Camden's authority. When the sabbatical ended and the executive director returned, Elise came back to her original role, and Camden resumed his position as a lead analyst. But everything had shifted. There was new trust between them, and a shared understanding that leadership and followership aren't permanent roles. They're states we step in and out of, depending on context, needs, and capacity. That's what effective followership looks like. Not passivity, not obedience, but presence, awareness, and partnership. Let's clear up a big misconception right away. Followership isn't about blindly agreeing or falling in line without question. It's not about being quiet, compliant, or invisible. In fact, some of the strongest followers are those who respectfully challenge ideas, ask the tough questions, and offer thoughtful alternatives when something doesn't sit right. Followership is active. It's about choosing to support a direction, not because you have to, but because you believe in the purpose behind it. It's about knowing how to contribute fully, even when you're not the one making the final call. And it's about understanding the bigger picture, recognizing that influence doesn't always come from authority and leadership doesn't always require a title. Effective followers are those who make leadership easier, not harder. They anticipate needs, they offer solutions, they lift others up, and just as importantly, they know how to step forward when a gap opens and step back when someone else's leadership is needed. Followership and leadership exist in constant dialogue. They rely on each other, and when both are strong, the organization becomes more agile, more resilient, and more collaborative. In OD, we talk a lot about distributed leadership, the idea that leadership can and should exist throughout the organization. But that only works when there's a distributed followership. These roles aren't opposites, they're complementary. They exist on a spectrum, and we each shift along that spectrum every day, sometimes in subtle ways. There are moments when you may lead a project, and moments when you support a colleague's idea. Times when you drive change, and times when you quietly hold space for someone else's growth. A healthy organization doesn't just recognize that shift, it celebrates it. This ebb and flow is natural. It's needed. And when people are encouraged to step in and step back based on the situation, not the org chart, it creates a culture where everyone is empowered to contribute meaningfully, where leadership becomes less about hierarchy and more about responsibility, accountability, and timing. As OD practitioners, we have a responsibility to help organizations see followership not as something secondary, but as a core competency. That starts with how we talk about it. We can normalize the language of followership in our leadership programs, team retreats, and coaching conversations. We can help people recognize that influence and initiative don't always require a title. We can also design opportunities for people to practice followership intentionally. That might look like assigning rotating roles in team meetings, so someone facilitates while another documents key points or leads the reflection. It might mean spotlighting employees who contribute through quiet consistency or strategic support, not just big, visible wins. And we need to model it ourselves. There will be times when we step in to guide a team through change, and other times when we need to follow. Whether it's a department head with deep contextual knowledge, a cultural protocol we're learning to honor, or a frontline employee who sees something we don't. Practicing followership as OD professionals keeps us humble, relational, and grounded in partnership. When organizations start valuing followership alongside leadership, they unlock a more collective kind of power, one where everyone feels seen, trusted, and capable of making a difference. Followership is not the opposite of leadership. It's its counterpart. It's what allows leadership to work. It's not about titles or hierarchy, but about presence, influence, and intentional contribution. In the story of Camden and Elise, we see how fluid these roles can be. One day you're leading, the next you're following, and on your best days, you're doing both in quiet, graceful rhythm. That's the kind of culture OD practitioners are uniquely positioned to support, where influence is shared, voices are valued, and people know how to show up for one another in every season. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Unboxing OD. If you're ready to take this conversation further in your organization, whether through leadership development, team building, or rethinking your culture from the inside out, Pearson & Pearson is here to help. We offer consulting, coaching, training, and OD services designed to help organizations grow intentionally and sustainably, with people at the center. You can email us at info@pearsonpearson.llc or connect with me directly on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear what resonated with you and how we can support your work. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep creating organizations where leadership and followership flow together, shaping something far greater than either could do on its own.